Over 70% of gas sold in America doesn't contain enough detergents to keep engines clean. That's why over 500,000 cars break down each year from carbon buildup alone. Today we are exposing 13 gasoline brands you should never use, and at the end, I will show you 5 that actually protect your engine. The same fuel blend my F-150s used to hit 390,000 miles. Let's dive in. Brand 13. Safeway gas stations. That grocery discount at the pump can feel like a win. Swipe the rewards card, watch the price drop a few cents, and drive away thinking you beat the system. But here's the quiet part most drivers never hear. The real cost may show up months later under the hood. Safeway doesn't produce its own gasoline. Like many grocery chains, the base fuel usually comes from the same regional storage terminals used by major brands. Tanker drivers will confirm that the difference happens when the truck is filled. That's when each brand injects its additive package. And this is where Safeway often falls short. Many Safeway stations are not top-tier certified, meaning the fuel may only meet the minimum detergent requirements set by the EPA. Modern engines, especially turbocharged and direct injection designs, are far more sensitive to this. To be fair, one tank won't wreck an engine, but relying on low-detergent fuel year after year can quietly shorten the life of injectors and fuel system components. Because the next stop on this list takes inconsistency to a whole different level. Brand 12. 7-Eleven. There's a good chance you've pulled into a 7-Eleven pump at least once at night, half awake, grabbing fuel and maybe a coffee before heading home. It's convenient, bright lights, quick stop. No questions asked, but convenience is exactly where the risk hides. Most 7-Eleven stations don't refine their own gasoline. They often buy from whichever regional supplier offers the best price that week. The base fuel may be the same terminal gasoline used by major brands, but the additive package and quality control can vary from station to station. That means one location might run perfectly fine fuel, while the next one down the road may not. Mechanics see the pattern. Drivers report rough idling, hesitation under acceleration, and sudden drops in fuel economy after months of regular fill-ups. In several states, inspectors have even shut down pumps after finding off-spec ethanol blends or water contamination in underground tanks. A few years ago, stations in parts of the Midwest temporarily stopped selling gasoline after tests showed fuel that didn't meet required specifications. Now, to be clear, the gas itself isn't automatically bad. The base gasoline usually comes from the same regional terminal as other stations. But inconsistent additives and storage conditions can make a difference over time, especially for modern engines with tight tolerances. Want to fill up at a convenience station like this? Do it occasionally, not as your regular fuel source. And keep an eye on your car. Rough idle and sudden MPG drops are early warning signs. Because the next stop on our list proves that cheap fuel can look like a bargain until the engine starts paying the bill. Brand 11. Sam's Club. Warehouse gas feels like a smart move. You're already there buying paper towels the size of a sofa, so adding a cheap fill-up feels like common sense. Save on groceries, save on gas, drive home feeling like a financial genius. But this is where a lot of drivers get too comfortable. Sam's Club fuel usually comes from the same regional terminals that supply bigger brands. That part is true. The difference is the additive package mixed in during loading, plus how the station manages storage and turnover. And Sam's Club is not consistently top-tier certified, which means you're not guaranteed the stronger detergent levels many automakers recommend. That matters more than most people think. Weak detergent fuel doesn't usually cause one big dramatic failure. It causes the slow stuff. Injectors get dirty. Intake valves pick up deposits. Cold starts feel rougher. Mileage drops a little. Throttle response gets lazy. The car still runs, but it no longer feels sharp. And yes, there have been reports at different warehouse-style fuel stations of water intrusion and cloudy fuel, especially after tank or delivery issues. That doesn't mean every Sam's Club pump is bad. Some high-volume locations move a lot of fresh fuel and do just fine. But that's the point. Consistency is the gamble. If you use Sam's Club for the savings, don't make it your only fuel source. Mix in a strong top-tier brand every few tanks, especially if you drive a turbo, direct injection car, or anything you plan to keep for years. The next brand takes that you never really know what you're getting feeling and puts it on almost every corner. Brand 10. Circle K. You know that feeling when the fuel light comes on, you spot a Circle K, and you tell yourself, it's just one tank. What's the worst that could happen? That's how a lot of bad fuel stories start. Circle K is easy, it's familiar, it's everywhere. And that's exactly why people let their guard down. Now, to be fair, the gasoline itself often starts at the same regional terminal used by other stations. But that does not mean every fill-up is equal. What matters is the additive package, storage condition, fuel turnover, and how well that location is maintained. Drivers in places like Florida, Texas, and South Carolina have reported fuel problems linked to water in the tanks, rough running, stalling, and engines acting up almost immediately after a fill-up. Even when it's not water contamination, many drivers complain about lazy throttle response, lower fuel economy, rough idle, and hesitation. That points to fuel that keeps the engine running, but not exactly clean. Use it only when you need to, but don't make it your regular home for premium fuel. Do you need more of this kind of breakdown that saves you money? Hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next station is one millions of drivers trust simply because it sits next to where they already shop. Brand 9. Murphy USA. This brand is the kind of station that wins you over before you even touch the pump. It's right there by Walmart. You're already stopping anyway. The price looks better than the station across the street, and that little gap on the sign feels like a victory. Murphy built its name on low prices and convenience. But when fuel gets cheaper, something usually gives. A lot of mechanics point to the detergent package. Not the octane number, not the logo, the cleaning additives. Murphy has had reported fuel problems in places like Texas and Louisiana, where drivers complained of cars stalling, sputtering, or barely leaving the station after filling up. In some cases, investigators found water contamination in the tanks. And even when there's no contamination event, many drivers still report rough idle, weak throttle response, poor mileage, and dirty injectors after long-term use. That's what makes Murphy tricky. It feels like a smart money move, but the savings can disappear fast if the fuel leaves deposits behind. The next station looks polished enough to fool a lot of people. Brand 8. Speedway. Some stations have a way of making you relax before you even start pumping. The place looks sharp. The lights are bright. The rewards app makes it feel like you're making a smart move. Speedway knows how to look dependable. That's part of what makes it tricky. For a lot of drivers, the trouble doesn't show up right away. It shows up later. The car feels a little slower. The idle gets rougher. Fuel mileage drops. Nothing dramatic at first, just enough to make you wonder if the engine is getting old before its time. And then there are the cases that make people remember the name for the wrong reason. In 2020, some Speedway locations were tied to reports of water-contaminated fuel after heavy rain. Drivers filled up, drove off, and within minutes the car started sputtering, stalling, or refusing to restart. That kind of problem turns a normal stop into a long day. Even without a major contamination event, Speedway has built a reputation for fuel that often feels more good enough than genuinely clean. Don't judge the fuel by the storefront. The next stop has a different kind of reputation, one built on long roads, late nights, and a lot of trust. Brand 7. Loves travel stops. There's something about a travel stop that makes people assume the fuel must be solid. Big lot, busy pumps, trucks everywhere. Love feels like the kind of place that should know fuel better than anyone. Love's is built around long-haul traffic, and that usually means diesel is the star of the show. Gasoline is there, yes, but for many drivers, it feels more like the side dish than the main meal. That matters when you're trusting it in a modern car that hates weak detergents and dirty fuel. Drivers in states like Oklahoma and Missouri have reported stalling and rough running after filling up at certain Love's locations, and there have been complaints tied to contamination and poor tank conditions. Some people made it a few miles, some barely made it off the exit. Even when it's not a bad tank story, regular use can still mean more deposits, rougher idle, weaker response, and dirtier injectors over time. Fine for a road trip emergency, not the place I'd keep going back to. Coming up next is different, familiar, bigger. Trusted by a lot more drivers than it probably should be. Brand 6. BP Regular, BP Premium. Some brands carry a reputation that sticks for decades. BP is one of them. For a lot of drivers, that green logo still feels like a sign of premium fuel and engineering. People assume if they pay extra for BP Premium, the engine must be getting something special. That's where expectations and reality sometimes drift apart. BP fuel meets legal standards, But many locations aren't top-tier certified, which means the detergent levels may not match the stronger cleaning packages used by brands like Shell or Chevron. Over time, weaker detergents can allow carbon deposits to build on injectors and intake valves, especially in modern direct injection engines. Drivers have reported cases in places like Florida and the Midwest where vehicles ran rough after fill-ups tied to contaminated storage tanks or fuel delivery problems. These incidents don't happen everywhere, but they're the kind of stories that make people cautious. Even without contamination, long-term use can show up as lower MPG, sluggish acceleration, and rough idle. If you're enjoying this breakdown so far, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next ones. Because the next brand carries a familiar name, one that sounds nostalgic to many drivers. Brand 5. Amoco Regular. That red, white, and blue Amoco logo carries a lot of history. For older drivers, it still feels like a badge of quality, the kind of pump your parents trusted on road trips. The name alone makes people assume the fuel must still be top shelf, but today's reality is a little different. Amoco is now tied closely to BP's fuel network, and at many locations the gasoline is essentially the same supply and additive package. That means if the detergent levels are modest, paying for the Amoco name doesn't automatically give your engine stronger protection. Mechanics often mention cars that run mostly on lower detergent fuel showing carbon buildup on intake valves, sticky injectors, and rough idle, especially in direct injection engines. Drivers notice the small things first: slower throttle response, fuel economy slipping, or the engine feeling less smooth than it used to, and there have been scattered reports over the years of fuel contamination issues at individual locations, usually tied to storage tank maintenance rather than the refinery itself. So the name may sound premium, but the protection isn't always. The real surprise shows up when fuel gets even cheaper. Brand 4. Arco. Few things grab a driver's attention faster than a fuel sign that's 20 or 30 cents cheaper than everything around it. That price gap is exactly how Arco built its reputation. Pull in, swipe the card, save a few dollars, and get back on the road. But cheap fuel sometimes comes with trade-offs drivers don't notice right away. Arco is well known for keeping prices low by trimming costs wherever possible, and that includes the additive package mixed into the fuel. The gasoline itself usually comes from the same regional terminals as other stations, but the detergent blend added during loading is often lighter than what stronger top-tier fuels provide. Drivers who rely on Arco regularly often talk about lower fuel mileage, engines that hesitate under acceleration, or cars that simply feel less responsive after a few months of fill-ups. In California and parts of the Southwest, there have also been reports over the years of water contamination and pump shutdowns tied to individual locations. One tank rarely causes trouble. The pattern shows up after many. The next stop on this list lives on the highway, where long drives and late nights make convenience hard to resist. Brand 3. Pilot Flying J. Picture a long highway drive at night. The fuel gauge drops, the road is empty, and a bright yellow Pilot Flying J sign appears like a lighthouse. Millions of drivers pull in every week for that reason alone: convenience. But here's what many car owners don't realize. These locations are built mainly for heavy diesel traffic, not small gasoline engines. Truck stops move enormous volumes of diesel every day, while gasoline pumps often sit quieter by comparison. That difference matters. Lower gasoline turnover can sometimes mean fuel sitting longer in underground tanks, especially in rural locations. Over time, older fuel can lose volatility, which leads to harder cold starts and sluggish throttle response. Drivers have reported this in several roadside complaints and automotive forums over the years. Then there's the maintenance factor. Large truck plazas run massive fueling operations, and when tank sensors or filters fall behind schedule, drivers occasionally report water-contaminated fuel incidents that lead to rough running and sudden stall complaints. None of that means every fill-up is risky, but relying on truck stop gasoline for daily driving isn't the smartest habit. What comes next might surprise a lot of people. Brand 2. Sunoco Regular Grade. Sunoco carries a reputation that sounds impressive. Racing banners, NASCAR partnerships, bright yellow pumps that suggest performance and quality. Many drivers assume that means every gallon is automatically top shelf, but the story changes when you look at regular grade fuel sold at many everyday locations. Sunoco operates through a large franchise network, and that means fuel quality can vary depending on who owns and manages the location. Over the years, there have been reported incidents where drivers complained about contaminated fuel, water in storage tanks, or incorrect blends being pumped into underground tanks. When that happens, cars often leave the lot running fine until a few miles later when warning lights appear. In several U.S. cases reported by local news outlets, drivers had to drain their tanks and replace fuel filters after filling up at individual Sunoco locations that later discovered water contamination in the underground storage tanks. To be fair, this problem usually comes down to maintenance at the location, not the gasoline supplier itself. But for drivers, the end result is the same: unexpected repairs. The next one is where almost everything depends on the operator behind the pump. Brand 1. Independent, unbranded stations. You've seen the sign before: a small roadside pump with a price that looks almost too good to be real. 10. Sometimes 20 cents cheaper per gallon than the big names across the street. That's the hook. The problem is simple: when there's no national brand behind the pump, everything depends on the owner running the location. Fuel itself usually comes from the same regional terminals used by major companies. That part surprises many drivers. The difference often shows up in how the storage tanks are maintained and how additives are blended before the fuel reaches your car. Over the years, local news reports across several states have covered drivers who filled up at small roadside locations and later discovered water in their tanks, clogged fuel filters, or stalled engines within miles of leaving the pump. In many of those cases, the root cause traced back to poorly maintained underground tanks or condensation buildup that slipped past monitoring systems. For older trucks or lawn equipment, it might not matter much. But modern engines rely on clean, stable fuel to run properly. Sometimes the cheapest pump on the street ends up being the most expensive fill-up you ever make. Fuel quality matters more than most drivers realize. The station you choose today can affect how your engine runs months from now. Like, subscribe and on notifications button, as in our next video, I will show you the 6 gasoline stations that sells quality fuel that protect your engine, and the last one in that list I use in my F-150s to go over 390,000 miles.